Training for Everest Base Camp Trek is no joke, and today I'm sharing exactly how I did it, what worked, what didn't, and what I would change. And make sure to stick around because at the end, I'll bust 3 major training myths that could seriously mess you up on the trail. The best way to train for high elevation hiking, like Everest Base Camp, is honestly just go do other high elevation hikes. Whether that's in Denver, Utah, Smoky Mountains, Rocky Mountains, wherever there's a mountain, find some elevation and go hiking. But let's get real. How often can you actually do that? Not that often. So I'm gonna tell you what I did for training for Everest Base Camp and what I would do differently if I had to do it all over again, which who knows, maybe I will. Now, full disclosure, I still ended up getting altitude sickness. And did that have anything to do with my training? I have no idea. Maybe if I didn't train the way I did, I would have gotten even more sick. Maybe I would have had a worse experience. All I know is I had a great Everest Base Camp experience overall, and I also had a lot of fun pushing myself both physically and mentally outside my comfort zone. My fitness level before training. So before I started training specifically for Mount Everest, I always been a pretty healthy adult. Ate healthy, lifted weights on a regular basis, but cardio was pretty much non-existent for me. Also, something else unique about me is I do plan ahead. So I planned my Everest Base Camp trek about 1.5 years in advance. And I started training exactly 1 year before the trek. So that's just my unique experience. I don't think everyone's gonna be able to plan that much in advance, but this is my experience, and I think the same thing I did would work on a shortened time frame. How I trained for Everest. Simple. My Everest Base Camp training came down to one simple thing: the Stairmaster. I determined the Stairmaster was the best form of cardio I could find for EBC, mainly because I wanted something where I could just set the speed and not think about it. Something that would stimulate climbing without destroying my joints. So it basically came down to the Stairmaster treadmill and maybe treadmill with an incline. And I figured the Stairmaster would be less pounded on those joints overall. Starting the training. So I started exactly 1 year ahead of my trek. Every session I would do 100 flights of stairs on the Stairmaster as quickly as I could, but keeping a steady, controlled pace. Not going super fast, but not crawling either. Just consistent movement at the fastest pace I could manage without stopping. And this part is key. No handrails, none. Using the handrails makes it way easier, but it also messes up your posture, takes work off your legs, and takes a lot of effort away from your core. So you'd be surprised how much your core works when you're climbing stairs properly, keeping you balanced and upright. How to go early on. So at the beginning, 100 flights of stairs would take me about 30 minutes. Now I would do that 3 times a week, usually at the end of my normal weightlifting sessions, because I've been lifting weights my whole adult life, and about 5 days a week is my normal routine. So I would just tack the Stairmaster onto the end of one of those lifting days. So after about 2 months of that, now this is no elevation mask. So 2 months of just straight stairs, no elevation mask. And my time would drop. So started around 30 minutes and then went down to about 20 minutes for the same 100 flights of stairs. Adding the elevation mask. After 2 months of building that cardio base, I decided it was time to add more difficulty. So I introduced the elevation mask. Now, the elevation mask has different levels. You can make it easier or harder depending on how much air it restricts. So when I first put on that mask, my first time to complete 100 flights of stairs, jumped right back up, maybe even like 35 minutes. It crushed me at first. Over the course of the next 10 months though, I kept the same basic structure, 2 to 3 times per week, definitely increasing it closer I got to the trek to even 5 times at the end, 5 times a week towards the end, but always 100 flights of stairs, never stopping, no handrails. Slowly increasing the difficulty setting on the mask as I got closer. Trying to shave down my time which I was able to get back down to 20, 22 minutes. So by the end of it, I could do 100 flights faster with elevation mask than I did in the beginning without any elevation mask. Yeah, I could do 100 flights of stairs with the highest mask difficulty in about 22 minutes, which is crazy to think that I could barely do that without any elevation mask a year earlier. Just shows you that your heart will get healthier, you will get faster, and you will get stronger, physically and mentally. Let's break down some of the gear. So, basic gear setup. Number one, a towel. You're gonna get sweaty, but the towel was more importantly for me was to cover up the machine because I don't want to stare at that time. I would cover up the time because otherwise I'd stare at that clock ticking, ticking, ticking. So cover up the time, helps you zone out a little bit, put my phone up, put on a TV show, movie, podcast, whatever you want, but the towel was mainly to cover the time. The sweatband, that was to cover up the sweat because if you're not sweating, you're not working hard enough. So sweatbands may be kind of weird looking, but definitely sweatband was essential. And the most cool part of gear was the elevation mask. So this actually this has a head strap as well. And yeah, you put it around, and there is a switch here that has a plastic hole. So there's a little hole where you breathe through. And if you put it all the way closed, it has about maybe a couple centimeters open, that tiny little space. But if you have it open, you have about that much space. So easiest difficulty level, hardest difficulty level, which is a big difference. By the end, I was at the hardest level, which is you're only breathing through this little tiny space. Yeah, so it goes over your nose, mouth. You sound like Darth Vader breathing. And looks kind of like an intense COVID mask, but yeah, elevation mask. Head strap, just to kind of, you're not doing anything too vigorous, but just helps keep it less pressure on the ear, so it does strap around. And it comes in a carrying case. Another piece of gear that I used quite a bit was an oxygen reader. So they actually had these on Everest Base Camp Trek, and they would do it every night to check your oxygen levels. There's other ways to do this. Some like smartphones or watches have it, but I didn't have one, so I just got one of these. It wasn't too expensive. And you just put your finger on it, and it gives you your oxygen reading. And it definitely, when I was working out, it would, well, when I wasn't working out, you know, you're in the 90s, but when I was working out hard, it would get to low 90s, maybe early 80s or high 80s, which I was dying at the end of my workouts, and it was getting to the high 80s. Everest Base Camp Trek, day 7, if you haven't seen the video, my oxygen reading was in the 60s. So just shows you, even though like I was dying in a workout with the elevation mask, that was high 80s. Actual Everest Base Camp Trek, high 60s. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's the gear. So highly recommend. So another point about the gear is when you're done using it, this comes out like this. This is all cloth. I would let it hang. I would wash it maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, whenever I would do laundry basically, but I wouldn't wash it every time, but just let it air dry. It actually doesn't smell. And then there's a little spray cleaner. You just get a little bit of moisture and condensation in there, nothing too disgusting, get some sweat. But yeah, just a quick wipe down. It comes with a spray, you can just wipe it down yourself. You hang this up, because if you just put it in there sweaty into the case, obviously you don't, it's gonna kind of like a moldy smell. So yeah, I would just hang this up every day, and right before you just goes right back on. Ramping up before the trek. As I got closer to the trek, about 3 months out, I bumped it up from the 3 times to 4 to 5 times a week with the Stairmaster session per week. It wasn't easy. Doing that much cardio, you burn a lot of fat. I definitely got leaner, started seeing abs that I haven't seen since a while, but it also came with some downsides like low energy. If you didn't eat enough, you had to eat enough. I had to really stay on top of eating more calories to fuel all that extra cardio. Give yourself that energy. Why this style of training matters at Everest Base Camp? You know, it doesn't matter how much you can bench or deadlift. It's your lungs, it's your heart, it's your breath. You can't move. Cardio is everything out there. Does the elevation mask actually work? The elevation mask physically makes your body work harder in a shorter amount of time. You're restricting airflow. You're forcing your body to get stronger, to adapt. Does it exactly stimulate Everest altitude? No, of course not, but it does make you mentally tougher. It does force your lungs, your heart, your core to push harder than normal. And honestly, that's the point. Why the elevation mask was essential for me. So I live in Florida. There's no real elevation anywhere near here. There's no easy access to mountains. I'm not flying out to Denver every weekend to train. I needed something practical that I could do several times a week without, leaving my little bubble of home and gym and grocery store. The elevation mask and the Stairmaster combo was the best and only real option I had. Again, it has to be a practical training program that you can do consistently. Now let's talk about something people don't really cover when it comes to training for Everest Base Camp, and that's mental preparation. Everybody talks about what type of physical training you need for Everest Base Camp. All about exercise level fitness, cardio, endurance, strength. That's all important, sure, but nobody talks about the mental training. And if you ask me, it's just as important, maybe even more important. And honestly, the biggest benefit of using the elevation mask, the part that nobody talks about, is not just physical, it's mental. The mental side of training for Everest Base Camp. When you're out there on the Everest Base Camp trek, mentally, you're going to be way outside your comfort zone. You're in a foreign country, eating foreign food, around foreign people and foreign culture and foreign towns. And yeah, that's fun and it's exciting, but it's still foreign. It's still hard. There are so many mental discomforts that you don't think about ahead of time that you're gonna be thinking about. Like, you're gonna be thinking about your safety. You're gonna be thinking about your comfort. There's gonna be a lot of discomforts up there, whether it's toilets, weather, clothing. You're gonna be thinking about all of that. You're gonna be thinking about how bad you smell. You're not, bathing. You're not brushing your teeth on a, easy basis. You're not even washing your hands. There's no towels up there. You're wondering if you're ever gonna be able to make it to base camp. You're wondering if you're gonna make it. Are you gonna be one of those people that can't make it to the top? If you're gonna get sick. You're thinking about how much money you spent on this whole trip and whether that's worth it. You're thinking about maybe you should have went on a different route, picked a different trekking company, picked a different friend to go with. You're probably gonna be missing your friends and family back home, maybe your kids, your spouse. Maybe you're traveling with a group of people and they're getting annoying, or maybe you're the annoyed one. Maybe you're with a group of friends and one of them gets sick and you have to wait for them, and you're tired of smelling puke all day. Maybe you have a bad guide or drama on the trail, someone yells at you for doing something wrong. There's a lot going on mentally, way more than you expect. And that's not even getting into the physical problems that hit you hard. What if you get sick? What if you have diarrhea for days on the trail? What if you have a splitting headache from altitude where every single step sounds like someone's hitting or feels like someone's hitting your head? What if you get blisters on your feet? Ever tried hiking with blisters for solid 12 days? What if you twist your ankle? Not enough to, send you packing, but it's gonna be hurting every step. What if you forget a piece of clothing? What if you lose a glove like I did? What if you're freezing cold or soaking wet or angry because there's too many clouds blocking your view of Everest? Just, what if it's something miserable? But there's so much that could go wrong. And if you're not mentally tough, it will ruin your trip. No matter how much you tell yourself mind over matter and stuff like that, if you don't prepare your mind, the whole just mind over matter thing's not gonna matter. Why mental endurance matters. You have to train yourself mentally to withstand uncomfortable situations. That's the real key to a good experience at Everest Base Camp. And honestly, the best way to do it is an elevation mask. So how does the elevation mask train your mind? Doing cardio training with an elevation mask is extremely uncomfortable. You're depriving your body, your brain, and your heart of oxygen, the most important thing, while doing a vigorous exercise. And that alone takes crazy mental discipline. It's not just hard physically, it's hard mentally. You have to calm your mind. You have to calm your breath. You have to breathe slowly and deeply, even when everything in your body is screaming at you to rip off that mask and stop. Because if you start panicking, or if you let your breathing get short and fast, you're done. You won't be able to, you literally will not be able to finish your workout. You'll have to rip off the mask and you'll fail the session. Or for me, if I ever did that, I punished myself with 10 extra minutes. So I never took this thing off because I didn't want to go into punishment. The only way you can finish is by forcing your body and forcing your mind to slow down. Training calmness under stress. I know you're tired. I know you're doubting yourself. I know you're thinking, there's no way I could finish this workout without stopping. But you have to calm down. You have to control your mind. You have to finish. You're gonna feel lightheaded. You're gonna feel weak. You're gonna feel like your body is shutting down, mainly because it's running on less oxygen. And when you're done, you're barely gonna be able to talk clearly. You're not gonna be able to just jump off, regular exercise and just start chit-chatting like normal, spin class. No, you're barely gonna be able to talk clearly. You're gonna be wobbly. You're gonna feel wrecked. You're literally depriving your body of oxygen for a solid 30 minutes while doing a vigorous workout. Yeah, you're not gonna feel great afterwards. You're building mental toughness. And you do this regularly, you stick to it multiple times a week for months without cheating, without grabbing those handrails, without stopping halfway, without ripping off the mask when it gets hard. That's what builds mental toughness. That is what trains your body and, more importantly, your mind to endure uncomfortable situations. That's how you endure uncomfortable situations. Why it matters for Everest. Because guess what? When you're on Everest Base Camp Trail, you're gonna be uncomfortable for days at a time. You're gonna have a headache for multiple days straight. You're gonna have stomach issues for days, hopefully not days straight. But you're gonna be freezing cold at night for days straight. You're gonna be hungry. There's not a lot of snacks on there. You're gonna be tired of Snickers bars. You're gonna be hungry. You're gonna be sore, and you may be frustrated. And if you're not mentally ready for that, it's gonna destroy your experience. Not just surviving, thriving. It's not just about surviving Everest Base Camp. It's about enjoying it. And I truly believe that I was able to enjoy it more than most people because I trained my mind just as much as I trained my body. No matter how hungry, cold, tired, sick, or uncomfortable I was able to push through, stay positive, and enjoy my journey. Because I knew from all those Stairmaster elevation mass sessions that I could endure way more than I thought. The mental muscle was already trained, and that made all the difference. The main thing to remember is everybody's body reacts differently. I had some friends on the trail who started feeling sick and getting headaches and weakness, as early as the second, third day. And for them, the experience was definitely less fun, maybe not terrible, but not nearly as enjoyable as it could have been. Meanwhile, I had zero symptoms of altitude sickness the whole way up. It wasn't until the evening of summit day, which was day 7 for me, that this was like the day we go to the rock. That night was the only time I felt sick at all, where I started feeling sick. Did my training help? Now, do I know for sure if my training made the difference? No. Nobody can say for sure. Would I've gotten more sick without all my preparation? Probably. Would it have been better or worse if I added an acclimatization day? Maybe. But again, you never know. At the end of the day, what I do know is I was way better off because I put in the work. My body and my mind was ready for the challenge. Was there a better way to train? Maybe. Maybe if I spent more money and went to real mountains, but was my method practical for my life, my time, and my resources? Absolutely. And that's important too. Your training needs to be practical to your life. Whether you're a gym person who wants to go to a Stairmaster, or whether you want to go run around your block, or whether you have the home gym equipment, it has to be practical to you. What was it like training with the mask at the gym? Yes, I got a bunch of weird stares at the gym wearing the elevation mask, looking like Darth Vader, sounding like Darth Vader. But people, they'll look at you. Maybe they thought I was crazy. I don't know. People are still nice. But a lot of people came up and wanted to talk to me. They were curious. They wanted to know what type of training I was doing, why I was doing it. And it's usually the really fit people that would go up and talk to you. So yeah, I actually made a lot of friends because of it. And I guarantee you, my heart was 10 times stronger and healthier than almost anybody else just lifting weights or doing casual cardio. Did I train with my hiking gear? Now let's talk about another common question. Did I train with my hiking boots? Did I wear a backpack or a weighted vest? Honestly, I thought it was a little bit over the top. And I'll be real, part of it was my ego. I didn't want to look like a complete freak walking around the gym with full trekking gear on, but also it just didn't seem necessary for me. I had already broken in my boots. I do hike quite a bit, so I had boots that were already worn in, so I knew they wouldn't cause blisters. I already trusted my feet, and I knew my feet and my back would survive the trek. So to me, I wanted to focus on the most important thing. And to me, training my heart and my mind were the most important things. So I would just wear normal gym clothes and gym shoes. That was my priority. What's the right training for you? What's the right training program for you? Honestly, it's gonna be different for everybody. Was my training over the top? Maybe, but at the end of the day, the most important things that you really should focus on are two things: cardio and mental preparation. If you could find another way to do that, awesome. Customize your own program, but take what you like from what I did and leave the rest. But whatever you do not underestimate the mental and physical grind of Everest Base Camp Trek. Bonus tip, be careful with weight training. And a quick tip based on a lot of Everest Base Camp videos I've seen online. If your body is not used to weightlifting, be careful if you're thinking about starting a heavy lifting program just for Everest. Start low weight, start with low intensity. The last thing you want to do is injure yourself doing back squats or deadlifts, blowing out your back and hurting your knees, deadlifting really heavy weights when your body isn't ready. At the end of the day, you don't want to injure yourself before your trek. So, you're not training for a bodybuilding show. You're training to get strong, stay healthy, and survive a brutal trek. All right, let's bust some myths real quick, because almost everything you hear about Everest Base Camp, it's either half true or totally wrong. So here are the 3 biggest myths for training for Everest Base Camp Trek. Myth number 1, if you're young and fit, you won't get altitude sickness. This one gets so many people in trouble. It doesn't matter how young you are, doesn't matter how ripped you are, altitude sickness is the ultimate equalizer. You cannot out-train it, you cannot out-muscle it. I saw marathon runners on the trail getting sick at 13,000 feet while a 60-year-old grandpa just kept cruising. What matters is your body's ability to adapt to oxygen deprivation. Fitness helps, but it's no guarantee. So yes, train your body, but don't walk into Everest thinking that your youth or six-pack abs will protect you. Myth number 2, you need to hike mountains every weekend to prepare. Wrong. Would it help if you could hike mountains every weekend? Of course. But for most of us, that's just not realistic. I mean, I live at sea level. I can't fly to Colorado every Saturday. So instead, I train practically with Stairmaster sessions, cardio, heavy cardio, and an elevation mask, and that worked. You don't need weekly mountain summits to be ready for Everest. What you need is consistent, sustained cardio training, something that builds your endurance, your lungs, and your mental toughness over months. Not everyone has access to big mountains, but everyone can train their heart and their mind. Myth number 3, the biggest myth that everybody talks about is that the elevation, the incline, the distance are the hardest parts. Wrong. Everyone talks about how Everest Base Camp is hard because of the elevation. How many feet you're climbing, how many miles were you trekking, how steep are the trails? And yeah, those are absolutely, real things, but honestly, they're not the killer. The real difficulty at Everest Base Camp is the trail itself. It's rugged, it's rocky, it's completely uneven. You are never walking on a smooth, flat path, even in the villages, not for a single second. The streets in the villages are even worse. The tea house area is everywhere. Even when you think you're safe, you're not. The paths are just made of jagged stones, loose gravel, uneven rocks, uneven steps that aren't really even steps, just random rocks, random rock gardens, crumbling staircases. And, so because of that, you can never zone out. You can't just stroll along and think about how great the views are. No, every step requires mental focus. You have to be step conscious. You have to be looking at every single step that you make. Is that rock loose? Is that, cobblestone broken? Are you gonna be stepping on the side of it? Is that, slope too steep if you, land the wrong way? And if you lose focus for even a second, you can trip. Yeah, you won't die, but you'll twist an ankle, bang a knee, tumble, who knows? You could really hurt yourself, but definitely twisting an ankle is very, very common. And yeah, some twisted ankles send you home, others just make your whole trek uncomfortable. You have to power through it. I saw it happen more than once. Even on the first day of the trek, I've seen people twist their ankles and they're in pain the whole rest of the trek. But it is honestly exhausting. You're already tired from the altitude, you're tired from the miles of trekking, and now mentally forcing your brain to stay sharp for every second of every hour, day after day. The mental drain, that's what no one prepares you for. So you don't just need strong lungs and strong legs, you need strong concentration. So when you're training, don't just focus on how fast you can climb those stairs. Focus on your mental endurance too, because on Everest Base Camp, it's not about getting up the mountain, it's about staying on your feet every rugged, rocky, brutal step of the way. At the end of the day, Everest Base Camp isn't just a hike, it's a test of your mind and body. You don't need the fanciest training plan, you just need consistency, cardio, and the ability to stay calm when things get tough. If you build that now, you'll be ready for whatever the Himalayan mountains throw at you. So thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-world trekking advice. I'll see you on the mountain, and don't forget, travel far.